A blood-red horizon bled into the pre-dawn sky, as if the very atmosphere had been set aflame. Birds were conspicuously silent, and the air tasted faintly of ash and dust, carried on winds from the vast Siberian wildfires that raged through March 2025. May, a night shift nurse with a restless curiosity, stepped onto her apartment balcony and felt a shiver of recognition when she saw the uncanny crimson glow. Was this merely a rare convergence of wildfire smoke, residual volcanic ash from the Antic crocodile eruption earlier this year, and urban pollution scattering sunlight into ruby hues, or something far more ominous? Scientists note that when sunlight traverses an atmosphere thickened by particles, whether from record-breaking North American wildfires or renewed activity at Popocatépetl, in April, shorter blue wavelengths scatter away, leaving only reds and oranges to dominate sunrise and sunset skies. Yet online whispers insist that this is exactly the scene foretold by Baba Vanga, the blind Bulgarian mystic who, according to internet accounts, predicted a red sky omen in 2025, though no definitive transcript of her precise words survives. And skeptics argue such claims are retrofitted to viral photographs, as May snapped photo after photo on her phone, a knot of tension coiled in her chest. Was she witnessing an extraordinary atmospheric phenomenon, or the fulfillment of a centuries-old prophecy? On forums, climate researchers caution that increasing particulate concentrations are the real culprit, warning that these scarlet dawns foreshadow environmental crises rather than supernatural upheaval. Meanwhile, conspiracy channels stoked fear, claiming the red sky was a harbinger of geopolitical collapse or supernatural reckoning. The interplay of hard scientific data and primal dread created a crescendo in May's mind. She found herself scouring the latest atmospheric reports while scrolling through posts alleging that Baba Vanga's spirit was awakening. In that moment, the boundary between empirical reasoning and age-old mysticism blurred, leaving her and countless viewers to wonder, will this fiery dawn remain a transient spectacle, or has history's most enigmatic seer forever altered the way we watch the sky? A deep, uncanny hush seems to settle whenever a sky glows crimson, an echo of ancient mariners who once whispered that a blood-red sunset foretold tempestuous seas, and medieval villagers who watched scarlet horizons as ominous harbingers of plague or looming conflict. In those distant eras, a red sky was a symbol, a portent woven into communal psyches. Fathers would call their children indoors, worrying that the heavens themselves were issuing a dire warning. Today, however, that same eerie hue carries new weight. In 2025, record-breaking Siberian wildfires exploded across the Arctic Circle, churning plumes of smoke so vast they circled the globe. Meanwhile, renewed eruptions at Guatemala's Fuego and Ecuador's Sangay have lofted fine ash into stratospheric currents, lending sunsets in North America and Europe an otherworldly, ruby-stained glow. As recently as May, scientists explain, in measured tones, that these particulates scatter shorter blue wavelengths, leaving only the deepest reds to paint the sky. Yet such empirical clarifications often fall upon ears primed for drama. In our hyper-connected age, a single TikTok clip of a fiery dusk over Vancouver can ignite a global inferno of speculation in minutes, with hashtags like #BloodSky2025 trending on X and Instagram Reels. For many viewers, that pulsating red canvas transcends mere atmospheric optics, morphing into a symbol of 21st century anxieties, accelerating climate change, relentless wildfires, and industrial pollution so pervasive that every sunset seems like Earth's silent scream. On French channels, self-styled seers claim the phenomenon confirms ancient prophecies, but climatologists caution that these dazzling skies are, instead, distress signals, urgent reminders that our planet's equilibrium is unraveling. As the world watches each scarlet sunrise, the mystery deepens. Is this vivid tableau a fleeting natural spectacle, or does it mark a turning point in humanity's fraught relationship with the environment? A sudden hush fell over the world as a deep crimson glow stained the sky, evoking a sense of profound mystery, as though some cosmic painter had splashed the heavens with blood. Yet beneath that unsettling beauty lies a precise scientific story. At its core, the phenomenon hinges on atmospheric optics. During sunrise or sunset, sunlight traverses a far thicker slice of atmosphere, allowing rayless scattering to remove shorter blue wavelengths and leave reds and oranges dominant. When fine particulates from dust, smoke, or volcanic ash are present, scattering takes over, scattering all wavelengths more uniformly. dimming the sun while intensifying the red's scientific fundamentals in 2025. Multiple environmental triggers converged to create record-setting red skies, unprecedented wildfires across Siberia, and Russia's Far East ignited by exceptionally dry spring weather, and human practices burned over 629,000 hectares by mid-May, spewing massive quantities of black carbon and organic aerosols into the lower stratosphere. These smoke plumes were carried by winds toward North America and Europe, tipping sunsets into deep ruby wildfires. April 2025 ongoing at the same time. The 2024 to 2025 Canlaon eruptions in the Philippines, including explosive events on April 8th and May 13th, lifted fine volcanic ash above 4,500 meters, which drifted westward, injecting aerosols that further reddened skies over Southeast Asia and beyond. Volcanic activity earlier in January, Caclauia's plume, rose from Hawaii, and Mt. Mayon in the Philippines began intermittent eruptions on January 14th. Adding to the background dust load in the tropics, volcanic activity earlier in January, Caclauia's plume rose from Hawaii, and Mt. Mayon in the Philippines began intermittent eruptions on January 14th. Adding to the background dust load in the tropics, volcanic activity visual examples from early 2025 punctuated the drama. On February 3rd, Beijing's skyline appeared to bleed orange at dusk, an image that circulated worldwide for days. New York City briefly saw a midday red haze in March when Canadian wildfire smoke surged eastward, turning daytime into a surreal twilight, and on May 5th, satellite imagery captured the scarlet aftermath of Siberia's Far East blazes. Visible from space visual observation, scientists caution that while such spectacles are undeniably beautiful, they portend environmental stress. High aerosol optical depth, cool surface temperatures yet can disrupt precipitation patterns and degrade air quality, leading to spikes in respiratory illnesses. Environmental implications. The combination of RayLa and me scattering under these unique particulate loads creates a visual crescendo, an otherworldly glow that climaxes at sunrise or sunset, leaving onlookers both awestruck and uneasy. In a climate-anxious 2025, these crimson skies became more than just natural phenomena. They turned into ominous symbols. Content creators wove the scientific explanations into dramatic narratives, speculating that such blood skies herald deeper shifts in global systems. Some commentators argued that this was evidence of Earth's alarms, referencing studies showing that boreal fires can slow warming locally, but exacerbate long-term climate feedbacks. Aerosol climate impacts. Others, however, drilled into historical lore, recalling how sailors once feared crimson sunsets as portents of storms, and medieval villagers saw red horizons as signs of plague or war. Yet this time, the culprit was measurable. Particulate concentrations peaked at levels not seen since 2023, according to NASA's OMPS data, which recorded aerosol pollution in the northern hemisphere stratosphere. Throughout the wildfire season, modern resonance. Ultimately, the red sky of 2025 stands at the crossroads of art and analysis, mystery and measurement. It teaches us that whenever the heavens turn vermilion, we must look both upward in wonder and downward to our smoke-belching forests, rumbling volcanoes, and congested cities, to see not just a fleeting spectacle, but a complex tapestry of ecological forces that demand our urgent attention. A heavy stillness wrapped the land whenever the sky turned an otherworldly crimson, as though the sun itself had bled into the atmosphere. Yet beneath that haunting beauty lies a troubling nexus of pollution and climate feedbacks. In spring 2025, Southeast Asia's air quality descended into uncharted territory. Satellite data revealed that PM2.5 concentrations spiked by 55% in April, rising from 103.7 micrograms m to 160.8 micrograms m, and surged another 87% in May, climbing from 74.2 micrograms m to 138.9 micrograms m, marking record highs unseen in recent years. Hospitals in Bangkok and Chiang Mai reported a corresponding uptick in respiratory distress cases. Emergency room visits for asthma and bronchitis increased by nearly 20% compared to the same period in 2024 as smog-laden crimson dawns heralded hazardous air days. At the same time, the familiar rhythm of monsoon rains faltered. Unseasonal thunderstorms in northern India cooled fields already shrouded by red haze, leading farmers in Punjab and Haryana to remark on unexpected drops of up to 3°C beneath the persistent, copper-tinged skies. Scientifically, These phenomena spring from the dual mechanics of aerosols in Earth's atmosphere. Rayless scattering explains why, at dawn and dusk, shorter blue wavelengths are scattered out of view, leaving reds and oranges to dominate, but when larger particulate smoke, dust, or fine volcanic ash swirl aloft, these scattering equally diffuses all wavelengths, simultaneously dimming direct sunlight and amplifying deep reds. In 2025, unprecedented Siberian and Canadian wildfire plumes towered into the lower stratosphere, while new eruptions at Popocatépetl and the Caribbean's La Soufrière injected fresh ash into prevailing wind currents, layering additional particulate matter across Asia and beyond. This cocktail of aerosols produced unmistakable blood skies, but scientists caution that these are not merely cosmetic curiosities. They presage more insidious climatic feedback loops. Aerosols can cool the planet by reflecting incoming solar radiation, yet soot and black carbon absorb heat, warming adjacent air masses, altering convection patterns, and even suppressing local rainfall. Such competing effects make regional weather notoriously unpredictable for many observers. However, the red haze is more than a scientific footnote. It feels like Earth's last quiet alarm. As the sky deepened to rust in Jakarta, emergency services noted a doubling of hospital admissions for acute respiratory issues, just as Bangkok's government extended cloud seeding efforts into May to wash away toxic particulates. Meanwhile, over the flooded paddy fields of West Bengal, villagers whispered that their ancestors would have recognized this omen centuries ago. A blood sky foretold famines and floods. Now, they point to charted PM10 measurements spiraling past 300 micrograms per cubic meter as proof that the old portents had become painfully literal. Yet others urge caution against mixing myth and measurement. Climatologists remind us that while red skies can be spurred by volcanic ash or wildfire smoke, those same aerosols serve as a temporary shield reflecting sunlight and buying time, even as they exact a human toll in deteriorating air quality. As summer 2025 unfolds, the debate intensifies. Is each scarlet-tinged sunrise simply an aesthetic side effect of unchecked pollution, or does it demand we confront a deeper truth that our carbon-fueled world is unraveling under our feet, with May's cooler temperatures in northern India credited to a combination of residual haze, unseasonal rains, and palpable shifts in monsoonal patterns? Experts warn that these anomalies reflect a system in disequilibrium, not a fleeting blip. Farmers, healthcare workers, and policymakers now find themselves at a crossroads. Will they treat the red sky as a fleeting marvel to photograph, an Instagrammable spectacle destined to fade, or heed it as a dramatic clarion call, one that rises in a crescendo every dawn, urging humanity to look beyond the horizon and reconcile with the forces we have unleashed? A veil of mystery has always shrouded the life of Angelia Gushtarova, better known as Baba Vanga, a blind Bulgarian mystic born in 1911 who allegedly possessed the uncanny ability to see future events while wrapped in darkness. Though her early years were marked by rural obscurity and tragedy, losing her sight in a childhood accident, she emerged as a figure of whispered reverence across the Balkans, dispensing cryptic pronouncements to pilgrims who traveled from afar. Over the decades, her posthumous reputation swelled, analysts loyal to her legend retroactively attributed to her the prediction of the 2001 World Trade Center attacks, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, and even more recent events, such as the election of Barack Obama in 2008, claims that skeptics vigorously dispute, noting that many of her supposed prophecies were recorded only after the fact and often lack concrete dates or verifiable transcripts. Amid this swirl of fact, fiction, and fervent belief, one phrase has captured global attention in 2025. In 2025, the sky will bleed crimson, and mankind will tremble. Once dismissed as folkloric hearsay, this red sky prophecy has resurfaced with breathtaking intensity as earlier photographs from Siberia, Europe, and North America documented unprecedented crimson horizons, images of smoldering sunsets that seem ripped from apocalyptic canvases. These viral scenes, first noted in January over the frozen tundra of eastern Siberia and again in mid-February above London's smog-laden skyline, circulated rapidly on TikTok and X under tags like #BloodSky2025 and #VangaVision, inspiring citizen prophecy hunters to exhume every scrap of recorded testimony attributed to the mystic. Yet the exact origins of this red sky prediction remain frustratingly elusive. No contemporaneous recording from the 1980s or 90s contains her utterance verbatim, leaving believers to scour secondary sources often published decades later that paraphrase her counsel without specifying a location, a season, or whether she spoke in symbolic metaphor rather than literal forewarning. Some accounts claim she delivered the warning during a 1979 gathering in Petric, Bulgaria, where she allegedly told a group of onlookers that their grandchildren would witness an omen in the heavens in 2025, but historians note that these recollections only entered written form in Bulgarian tabloids around 2012, raising questions about their authenticity. As the world stepped into spring, however, the red sky phenomenon became impossible to ignore. By March, the conflagration of Canadian wildfires and fresh volcanic ash from Iceland's erupting Hekla had lent an eerie scarlet hue to dawns in New York and Paris, pushing the prophecy into earnest debate. Skeptical psychologists pointed out that humans innately seek meaning in random natural events, a phenomenon known as apophenia, and that linking a dramatic red dawn to an unsourced prophecy is an act of pattern seeking rather than evidence-based reasoning. They reminded the public that while Baba Vanga's followers have long preferred to filter her words through translation and retelling, often emphasizing the dramatic at the expense of precision, no peer-reviewed historical record confirms that she ever specified the color crimson or used the verb bleed in reference to the sky. Meanwhile, ardent believers curated playlists of archived television interviews, grainy audio recordings, and animated reenactments that wove her life story into an epic narrative of predestination, insisting that once the sky did indeed bleed, in 2025, the prophecy could no longer be dismissed as myth. By April and May, heated debates raged not only on social platforms, but also on televised news panels. Climatologists explained that the crimson skies were driven by exceptional particulate concentrations from wildfires in Siberia and volcanic plumes drifting eastward. Yet conspiracy-oriented influencers countered that such scientific explanations only deepened the mystery, arguing that no combination of aerosols, humidity, and light angle could produce the sustained and uniformly blood-red dawn observed simultaneously in Jakarta, Lisbon, and Vancouver without some cosmic intervention. As June rolled in, public fascination showed no sign of abating. Documentaries and production scrambled to interview surviving disciples of Baba Vanga, men and women now in their 70s, who recall her as a kindly old woman whose gaze, even shrouded in darkness, seemed to pierce the veil between the known and the unknowable. One such disciple claimed that in late 1994, shortly before Baba Vanga's passing, she confided that the human race would face an awakening when the heavens turned to fire, but offered no details on whether this awakening implied war, climate collapse, or a collective spiritual reckoning. Today, as red horizons continue to flare unpredictably, June's occasional dust-streaked dawns over New Delhi and Mexico City, stoking fresh waves of viral footage. The question that reverberates across forums is whether humanity stands merely before a transient atmospheric marvel or at the brink of a profound transformation foretold by one of history's most enigmatic seers. In this charged atmosphere, every crimson sunrise feels like a crescendo in a story centuries in the making, a narrative that alternates between the tangible mechanics of aerosol physics and the intangible allure of prophecy, leaving viewers and readers alike poised on the knife's edge between skeptical analysis and the timeless human yearning for meaning in the skies above. A hush fell over cities and countrysides alike when, in early 2025, dawn after dawn bled into fiery reds, an uncanny spectacle that invited both scientific scrutiny and whispers of ancient prophecy. Scientists, in steady, measured tones, explained that this crimson tint was no preternatural omen, but the inevitable result of particulate scattering. Wildfire smoke from the record-breaking Siberian and Canadian blazes of late 2024, desert dust swept aloft by spring storms, and volcanic ash from fresh eruptions Canlaon in the Philippines and Hekla in Iceland all combined to fill the sky with aerosols that scatter shorter blue wavelengths away, leaving only deep reds to dominate sunrise and sunset skies. Yet alongside these cold, hard mechanisms, a more ominous narrative emerged. Adherents of the Bulgarian mystic Baba Vanga insisted that this was precisely the red sky she foretold, a sign of looming cataclysm, whether war, disease, or the final unraveling of human civilization. The contrast between science and prophecy could scarcely be more stark. On one hand, precise measurements of aerosol optical depth recorded by NASA's OMPS in March, April, and may show distinct spikes on February 14th, April 2nd, and May 19, 2025, as plumes from Siberian fires and Popocatépetl eruptions lofted particulates into the upper troposphere. On the other, Vanga's cryptic message, in 2025, the sky will bleed crimson, and mankind will tremble, offered no calendar date, no geographic coordinates. Fueling both fascination she got the year right, and frustration to vague. The environmental reality, however, painted a more nuanced picture. The blood-red horizons remained regional and episodic, most intense over Southeast Asia in March and April. Before gradually subsiding by late May, there was no single global blood sky event, but rather a recurring series of local phenomena. Beijing's skyline softening to ruby at dusk. On February 3rd, Vancouver's midday sun dimming to a rust hue under Canadian wildfire haze in March, and New Delhi awash in crimson during a dusty storm in early May. These episodes, while undeniably dramatic, lacked the unity of a single, planetary scale portent. Instead, they underscored how our planet's atmospheric tapestry fluctuates with each flare of ecological stress. Against this backdrop, Vanga's prophecy took on a life of its own. Some interpreted it as heralding a singular cataclysm, the World War, the Great Disease, even the end times, while others reimagined her slender words as a metaphor for climate upheaval. That the sky bleeds because Earth bleeds. Social media amplified the tension. Hashtags like #BloodSky2025 trended on X and TikTok, and video compilations juxtaposed Vanga's grainy archival footage, herself seated in shadow, eyes unfocused yet piercing with the latest scarlet-drenched footage from a top Beijing CCTV tower or a rooftop in Bangkok. Yet psychological skeptics hasten to remind viewers of apophenia, the human tendency to find meaningful patterns in random data. When the world sees a red sky, they argue, we are primed to recall any vaguely similar prediction, however loosely documented. Indeed, no peer-reviewed transcript locates Vanga's precise phrasing, and references to her red sky vision only began surfacing in Bulgarian tabloids around 2012, decades after her death, which leads many historians to question whether the prophecy was recorded at all during her lifetime or merely retrofitted to viral imagery. Still, believers tell of personal premonitions and dreams they attribute to Vanga's spirit stirring in 2025. In a small village near Blagoevgrad, Bulgaria, one devotee recounts how she dreamed, in March, of rivers running red and skies aflame. Visions she concedes could have been influenced by late-night doom scrolling. In London, a self-described prophecy detective described vibrations he felt in late April, as though the very air carried an electric charge warning of unseen forces at work. Through it all, atmospheric scientists remained steadfast. Yes, it's dramatic, one expert conceded, but we measure aerosol optical depth, not mystical portents. Their instruments told of a clear storyline. Aircraft observations recorded PM to 0.5 surges above 200 GM in Delhi on May 8th. Coinciding with a backdrop of red skies. Satellite LiDAR tracked aerosol layers over Europe on April 2nd, correlating with a particularly vivid sunset in Rome. But those empirical data points did little to quell the sense of cosmic dread that rippled across forums and living rooms alike. The timing and specificity of each camp's claims further fueled the drama. Science pointed to exact dates: February 14th, when Siberian wildfire smoke first triggered a reddish pall over Helsinki; April 2nd, when volcanic ash from Popocatépetl eruption cast a scarlet glow over Mexico City; May 19, when combined particulate loads produced an unforgettable photogenic sunset across Tokyo. By contrast, Vanga's prophecy remained anchored only to the broad expanse of the year 2025, an almost poetic latitude that allowed believers to see each new crimson dawn as proof of her foresight, while skeptics lamented the prophecy's frustrating lack of detail. This gap birthed a tension that crescendoed in May, when Europe's skies deepened to vermilion, under a double whammy of Saharan dust and distant volcano plumes. Conspiracy channels claimed it as the long-promised blood sky, a herald of Earth's reckoning, even as climatologists drafted urgent papers warning that such aerosol surges, though visually stunning, were mechanisms of temporary cooling, not pathways to apocalypse. Indeed, recent research published in May 2025 indicates that while high-latitude aerosols from wildfires can reflect sunlight and momentarily lower surface temperatures by up to 0.3 C locally, they also disrupt monsoon patterns and weaken the jet stream, potentially leading to extreme weather events later in the season and intricate web of cause, an effect that neither satisfies the appetite for simple doom, nor fits neatly into the mold of an end times prophecy. As summer approached, the scope of impact remained contained yet evocative. Villagers in Punjab spoke of unexpected nighttime chills beneath a blood-tinted sky, attributing harvest failures to clashing weather patterns. Emergency rooms from Jakarta to Karachi reported elevated admissions for smog-related ailments whenever the dawn's red light suffused city streets. Meanwhile, some believers took heart, framing each crimson dawn not as a sign of ruin, but as a call to collective awakening, a symbolic nudge to heed scientific warnings about pollution and climate change, as though Vanga's words served as a bridge between mythic tradition and ecological urgency. At the same time, skeptics cautioned that blending mysticism with meteorology risked obscuring real solutions. The red sky might draw an audience, but reducing complex atmospheric processes to supernatural portents could distract from the hard work of emission reductions, forest management, and volcanic monitoring. Ultimately, the clash between science and prophecy unfolded like a dramatic tapestry. Objective commentary from meteorological institutes and peer-reviewed journals wove threads of data, particulate counts, aerosol indices, temperature anomalies into a clear, if sobering, narrative of anthropogenic and geological forces colliding in Earth's atmosphere. Interspersed with that, the evocative lure of Vanga's prophecy shrouded in the mystique of a half-remembered utterance. A phrase passed through translators, editors, and viral video captions lent the unfolding events a layer of existential dread that no chart or satellite image could convey. And as viewers watched scarlet horizons flicker across their screens each sunrise, a potential fulfillment of an age-old prediction, they found themselves at the apex of a story, centuries in the making, one that alternates between measured analysis and the primal human yearning for meaning, poised on the edge of belief and skepticism. In this charged moment, every crimson sky felt both like nature's elemental spectacle and an echo of a prophecy, leaving humanity to decide whether to interpret these skies as mere particulate artistry or as the final verses of a mystic's ancient song. A crimson haze hovered over the tiny fishing village of Palabuhan Ratu in early April 2025, enveloping the dawn in an unsettling red glow that felt less like sunrise and more like a prelude to something ancient and unknowable. Fisherman-like, Ramit described how, at first light, the sea itself seemed to refuse its usual sapphire calm, as crimson reflections danced on waves. Before the morning catch revealed the true horror scores of dead fish, their scales stained as if by blood, floating lifelessly under the scarlet sky. Elders, their lined faces etched with generations of superstition, leaned on their bamboo rods and whispered hoarsely, "Baba Vanga was right," their voices trembling between reverence and fear, even as local health officers issued bulletins, noting elevated particulate levels off the coasts of Java. PM2.5 readings spiking above 150 micrograms m, more than 6 times the World Health Organization's recommended limit. Meanwhile, in Bangkok, Dr. Chananya Somchai, a Thai atmospheric scientist, huddled over satellite imagery in her cluttered field lab, her brow furrowed as she cross-referenced data from the Himawari satellite with ground-based LiDAR measurements. She knew the media's sensational headlines, "Is the sky dying?" had distorted her painstaking research into aerosol optical depth, turning tweets into pseudo-breaking news and reducing complex climate feedback loops to viral sound bites. On social media, #Redsky20-5 surged, a popular influencer livestreamed from a crumbling rooftop in Jakarta, comparing her smartphone footage to an old, grainy 1941 photograph that circulated online, purportedly showing a similar blood-red dawn. Before the attack on Pearl Harbor, in parallel, a sober BBC anchor broke down live, voice cracking, "Is Earth warning us of its own demise?" While an irreverent late-night comedian, Making Hand, mocked the Baba Vanga parody account that claimed the mystic spirit had been reincarnated to narrate apocalyptic TikToks. Every clip a clash of dread and derision. On April 3, 2025, that tension reached a fever pitch. Jakarta's municipal government declared an air quality emergency, ordering schools to close as AQI readings soared into the hazardous zone. Over 300 in some districts, prompting ambulances to roam streets littered with surgical masks. And, in a crowded plaza near Mona's, a robed figure mounted a hastily erected podium, microphone crackling, and summoned the crowd to heed Baba Vanga's warning. In 2025, the sky will bleed crimson, and mankind will tremble, urging them to prepare for the end. Panic rippled through onlookers as food vendors shuttered stalls and a military band ceremonial drums echoed off smoke-laden buildings. At the same moment, a hastily called press conference convened inside the Ministry of Environment, where besuited climatologists presented graphs showing that the vivid red hue resulted from a three-way convergence: Siberian wildfire plumes carried by jet streams, freshly erupted ash from Popocatépetl drifting northward, and urban smog trapped under an unseasonal high-pressure system. Citizens cradled their children, torn between the robed prophets' apocalyptic fervor and the clinical assurances of scientists, who cautioned that, while breathing in particulate matter at current levels could exacerbate asthma and bronchitis, the red sky itself was a temporary spectacle, a side effect of aerosol scattering, not an omen of supernatural collapse. By early June 2025, as monsoon rains finally washed pollutants from the atmosphere, AQI readings in Jakarta had fallen back below 100, and the crimson veil lifted to reveal clear blue once more. Yet the memory of those blood skies lingered. In street conversations and WhatsApp groups, where villagers in Punjab still spoke of nights so dark the moon seemed swallowed, and healthcare workers in Chiang Mai recalled a 22% surge in respiratory cases during April's worst haze. In every corner, fishermen, scientists, social media pundits, and self-styled prophets, the story pulsed with unresolved tension. Was this dramatic Scarlet Dawn simply the planet's seasonal tantrum, a transient atmospheric drama bound to ebb and flow with shifting winds, or did it mark a deeper fracture between humanity and nature, a forewarning that even the most precise satellite readings could not fully dispel? And as June's gentle rains dampened the streets, the collective question remained suspended in the humid air: would the next red dawn be another remarkable quirk of environmental mechanics, or would it herald a clamor of change so profound that even the skeptics, confronted by sickened children and withering crops, would find themselves whispering, "Perhaps there is truth in prophecy after all"? A shadow of enigma still lingers whenever we witness those blood-red dawns, beckoning us to question why, in an age of satellite imagery and real-time data, we instinctively search for deeper meaning beneath the swirling clouds, especially at a moment when anxiety over accelerating climate upheaval has reached a fever pitch. With the IPCC's March 2025 synthesis report warning of irreversible ecosystem tipping points, do we turn to mystics like Baba Vanga, not because we inherently distrust scientists, but because methodical equations and statistical models cannot fully soothe the existential dread that wells up from watching glaciers fracture and coral reefs bleach before our eyes in the hushed moments just before sunrise, when the horizon's fiery hues defy purely technical explanations? A primal impulse stirs, a yearning to connect the flicker of dread in our chests to a story as old as civilization itself. Yet objective commentary reminds us that science remains our most reliable lantern in the fog. At the June 2025 World Climate Summit in Geneva, climatologists presented updated aerosol radiation interaction models showing that while red skies may captivate our imaginations, they are measurable reflections of particulate concentrations rather than supernatural signals. Still, no amount of peer-reviewed research can completely silence the allure of a well-crafted narrative. Prophecies and conspiracy theories travel at the speed of light on social media, often outpacing the careful dissemination of weather bulletins and scholarly articles. We share 60-second videos of kaleidoscopic sunsets more readily than we digest 200-page climate assessments, because sensationalism like the claim that a red sky forewarns global collapse crystallizes collective fears into a shareable emblem, a digital talisman for our times. In every forwarded post and whispered tale, the human impulse to spin a dramatic arc around natural phenomena asserts itself. We crave a hero, a villain, and a moral lesson, even when the true drama lies in the interplay of wind currents and aerosol optical depth. Yet within this tapestry of myth and measurement, there flickers a glimmer of hope and agency. Those same red skies that once served as omens of doom can also be reframed as urgent calls to action. When Singapore's latest 2025 haze report recorded PM2.5 levels spiking again in April, prompting renewed pledges from ASEAN members to phase out coal power by 2030, it became clear that symbolic warnings can catalyze real policy shifts, as one leading climatologist, Dr. Leela Srinivasan, eloquently noted during a May 2025 webinar. A red sky at morning is a warning. A red sky at dusk is a promise of change. Let's make it a promise to heal. In that light, The crimson canvas above serves less as a harbinger of inevitable collapse than as an invitation to redefine our narrative, rather than surrendering to fatalism. We can harness the same collective imagination that fuels apocalyptic prophecies to envision and enact a sustainable future. By lighting discourse with both data-driven insight and the resonant power of storytelling, we remind ourselves that while the sky's rouge glow may stem from wildfires raging in Canada or volcanic ash aloft over Java, its true significance lies in galvanizing a world at the crossroads, pressing us to ask whether we will remain passive spectators of a planet in flux or become active stewards, determined to rewrite the story of our shared destiny. A hush falls as May, once a night shift nurse and now an impassioned citizen scientist, stands before yet another red-hued dawn in June 2025, camera poised and heart hammering not from fear, but from a fierce urgency to document every ember-tinted cloud and share vetted data with her neighbors, friends, and online communities. She recalls how, just months ago, the early morning sky bled crimson over Jakarta and Delhi, prompting schools to close and hospitals to brace for a surge in respiratory cases. Today's scarlet streaks, tamed with residual Saharan dust and wildfire smoke still tracing paths across the northern hemisphere, remind her that these aren't isolated curiosities, but ongoing distress signals from our planet. In that moment, an unspoken challenge passes to every onlooker. Next time you glimpse an eerie red sky, will you freeze in dread, whispering ancient prophecies in hushed tones, or marshal your curiosity, diving into the latest satellite reports, air quality briefings, and peer-reviewed studies to understand and respond whether Baba Vanga's foreboding vision holds mystic truth or proves a coincidental echo of atmospheric mechanics fueling a viral stream of conspiracy-laden hashtags matters far less than recognizing that the true prophecy resides in our collective choice to treat these crimson mornings as mere spectacles or as catalysts for action. Around the globe, communities are already mobilizing. Coastal villages in Indonesia that once whispered Baba Vanga was right are now rallying to replant mangroves. Urban activists in Bangkok, who once debated mystic warnings, have launched neighborhood air monitoring networks, and policymakers convening at the July 2025 ASEAN Environmental Summit are drafting binding commitments to curb deforestation and curb carbon emissions. As the horizon ignites again, the world stands on a precipice gleaming with both dread and possibility, reminding us that when the sky bleeds crimson, the question isn't whether prophecy or pollution made it so, it's what we choose to do before the next dawn.